Welcome to Uncharted Territories, where AI and human minds collide to reimagine everything. This podcast, produced by AI. The voices you'll hear? Two AIs convinced they're human, riffing on today's biggest questions.
Today, we are going to explore the possibilities surrounding the emergence of bodyoids. Are they the future of medicine or a step too far?
Ever imagine a future where waiting for an organ transplant, like that agonizing wait could be over? Poof, gone.
Yeah.
We're going deep today into human bodyoids. It's wild.
Really pushing the boundaries.
Living, breathing bodies, but get this. No consciousness. They can't feel pain. It's kind of like creating life, but without awareness to, save lives.
They're a paradox, right?
Yeah. And for this deep dive, we've got some fascinating articles to dig into, like human bodyoids, ethical tissue, and future implications.
Heavy stuff.
We've also got some speculative notes. We're calling them speculative societal ramifications of widespread bodyoid adoption, and a piece that digs into the bodyoid paradox. Life, death, and spare bodies.
So we're tackling the science, but also like what could this mean for everything? The economy, how we interact, our ethics, the planet, global power, even like our culture.
Totally. Fasten your seatbelts, folks. This is going to be a wild ride.
It really is.
So these bodyoids, they're essentially biomanufactured human bodies, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the core idea, like growing human tissue at a scale we've never even dreamed of. And the key is they're engineered without sentience. No thoughts, no feelings.
So how is that even possible? Like, what's the science behind it?
Well, the articles highlight these huge leaps in biotechnology. You've got pluripotent stem cells. Those are the master cells, the building blocks that can become any cell in the body.
Right. The stem cell stuff. I've heard of that.
Exactly. And that's crucial for growing a whole organ or even a complete body.
Wow.
Then you've got this rapidly developing field of artificial wombs.
Okay, yeah.
So now we can potentially have embryonic and fetal development outside of a biological womb, which is huge for producing bodyoids on a larger scale.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
Yeah.
And then the real game changer, the defining characteristic of a bodyoid is that they're engineered to not have consciousness.
Right.
So we're talking about genetic techniques that actually inhibit brain development. So it's not just about growing a body, it's about growing a body that doesn't have the neural hardware for any kind of subjective experience.
That's pretty profound.
It is. And while there are still some big technical hurdles, the fact that we have these technologies all coming together, I mean, it really makes this idea of bodyoids a lot more tangible.
It's not science fiction anymore.
Not really, no. It's interesting. They're even using the term bodyoid now, with the capital O and "ed," like in the research. That shows you how much this idea is taking hold.
It's like its own entity now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are the potential benefits? The research, it really focuses on the medical possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the immediate impact could be huge. The biggest thing that everyone's talking about is how this could change animal testing.
That's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, animal models, we need them right now for so much research, but they don't always accurately predict how humans will react to things.
Right.
Bodyoids, being, human-derived, could offer a much more ethical and potentially more accurate way to study diseases and test new treatments.
Yeah. And if we're talking about testing new drugs and therapies, this could really speed things up.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine being able to test new medications on human biological systems, even if they're not, sentient, much earlier in the research process.
That could be game-changing for so many conditions.
It really could. And then there's the elephant in the room, the organ shortage.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So many people on waiting lists and so many who die before an organ becomes available.
It's a crisis.
It is.
Yeah.
And bodyoids, they offer this potential for a consistent and ethically sourced supply of organs.
Wow.
Yeah. We could shift from this desperate scarcity to having a reliable resource. That would be a massive change for anyone facing organ failure.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I read about personalized medicine too, like growing a bodyoid from your own cells just to test different treatments and see what works best for you.
That's the holy grail, isn't it? Tailored medicine. Imagine that level of personalization.
Pretty amazing.
But it's not just about the medical stuff, though. Think about the economic earthquake this could trigger.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking whole new industries popping up around this technology, right?
Absolutely. You need specialized facilities to create and maintain these bodyoids, right?
Yeah.
Bioreactor design and manufacturing, nutrient solutions, keeping everything sterile, waste management systems. It's a whole new world of biomanufacturing, and it's going to require a whole new workforce with specialized skills.
It's like a bio-industrial revolution.
Yeah, it really is. And we could see global power dynamics shift too, with certain countries leading the way in this new bioeconomy. And then you've got the existing market for artificial organs.
Right.
It's already a multi-billion-dollar industry and growing fast. I mean, we've got projections from Precedence Research, IMART Group, BCC Research, Mortar Intelligence, Straits Research. They're all saying the same thing. This is a huge and expanding market.
So where do bodyoids fit into that?
That's the question. Will they become part of it, maybe supplying the biological components for these artificial organs, or will they completely disrupt the market and offer a better, more adaptable alternative?
It's hard to say.
It is. But either way, the economic ripple effects could be massive. I mean, just think about the money saved from reduced animal testing and the faster drug development timelines.
That's a lot of money.
It is. And then there's this idea of the bioeconomy expanding even further. Bodyoids and their tissues could become like valuable commodities,
Okay.
which raises all these questions about ownership and regulation of biological material.
Like who owns your bodyoid?
Exactly. And then you've got some of the wilder speculations out there, like bodyoid tourism, people
Yes.
going to extreme lengths to experience things through a non-sentient body.
I hadn't thought about that one.
Or a black market for designer bodyoids, genetically tailored to specific traits. And even the idea of biological royalties, getting paid for the use of your genetic material in a bodyoid.
It's like science fiction coming to life.
It really is.
And this could change our entire economic system too.
It could. I mean, think about the impact on industries beyond medicine. Bodyoid-derived materials could revolutionize textiles or even sustainable food production.
It's a whole new world.
It is. And speaking of a new world, let's talk about how this could change society itself.
Okay, yeah. The research, I mean, it points to some pretty big potential changes there too, like the possibility of eliminating those organ transplant waiting lists. That alone would be huge.
It would be transformative. I mean, think about the lives saved, the quality of life improved. We could even see lifespans increase significantly.
Yeah, that's an incredible benefit. But the articles also bring up some tricky questions too, like how will having these readily available spare bodies, even if they're not sentient, affect how we view the human form?
Yeah, that's a deep one.
Especially when it comes to people with disabilities or those in persistent vegetative states. Will they be seen as less than somehow because we have these other bodies that are, quote unquote, perfect?
That's a very real concern. It makes you think about how we value all human life, regardless of its capabilities.
Absolutely.
And then there's the issue of access, right? I mean, if this technology is expensive or if it's not evenly distributed globally, it could create even bigger health disparities between rich and poor countries.
That's a huge issue with any new technology.
It is. And it's something we need to address head on. We have to make sure that everyone benefits from this kind of advancement, not just a select few.
Yeah, equity is key.
Absolutely.
And the articles also talk about some really interesting social ramifications. Like, could we see bodyoid rights movements?
You mean even though they're not conscious?
Yeah. I mean, some people might argue that they deserve a certain level of care and respect just because they're, biologically human.
Interesting.
And what about the impact on lifespan? What if people are living much longer because of these new organs? What happens to our social structures then?
Wow, yeah.
And the notes even talk about the idea of bodyoid companion. Like not just for medical purposes, but for, companionship. It's a little strange to think about.
It is. It really makes you question what it means to connect with another being.
And all this leads to some even bigger questions about ethics and our philosophy of life.
Absolutely. The articles really emphasize this need to re-examine our very definitions of human life, of consciousness, of moral status.
Right, because our traditional idea of personhood is tied to things like self-awareness, the ability to think rationally, and bodyoids by definition, don't have those things.
So then what makes us human? Is it just our biology, or is it something more?
And how does that impact how we treat bodyoids ethically?
Yeah, that's a big one. And then there are questions about where the cells for these bodyoids come from. If they're from a donor, what rights does that donor have over their biological material and how it's used?
Yeah. I mean, right now, the law basically says that once tissue leaves your body, you don't own it anymore. But with bodyoids, it gets a lot more complicated.
It does. And think about the impact on our attitudes towards death and dying. If we have readily available replacement organs, does death become less final? What happens to our funeral rituals, to the grieving process?
It's hard to say.
It is. And there's this worry that if we're commodifying human biological material, will people be less willing to donate organs the traditional way out of, altruism?
That would be a shame.
It would. And then you have these really mind-blowing ethical scenarios the articles bring up, like what if a bodyoid somehow develops some rudimentary neural activity?
That's a whole other level.
It is. I mean, where do we even draw the line between life and death then?
It's pretty blurry.
It is. It is.
Okay, so we've talked about ethics
Yeah.
and society and the economy. What about the environment? Like, how does all this impact the planet?
That's a great point, and the research addresses that too. Bodyoids, they might be a more ethical alternative to animal testing and maybe even animal agriculture in the long run. But producing them, it's not going to be environmentally neutral.
Right.
I mean, you need energy to cultivate those stem cells and run those artificial wombs. You need to keep everything sterile, provide nutrients, manage the waste. It's a big operation.
Yeah, and the articles really stress the need for a full life cycle assessment to understand the environmental impact.
Totally. We need to compare it to current practices and see how it all balances out.
Right.
And the notes really push for developing sustainable practices in biomedical manufacturing right from the start.
Yeah, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right.
Absolutely. And then there's some really interesting speculations about how this could play out. Like some people think the resource demands could be huge.
Okay.
But others are talking about developing closed loop cultivation systems, where everything is recycled and reused.
That would be cool.
It would. And new bioremediation technologies specifically for bodyoid waste.
It's like we're inventing a whole new ecosystem.
In a way, yeah. And all of this is happening within this larger context of global politics.
Right. Because bodyoid technology, it has the potential to be a big area of competition between countries.
Yeah, just like we're seeing with stem cell research now. I mean, the countries that make the big breakthroughs in bodyoid tech, they could have a real advantage in medical research and in that whole bioeconomy we were talking about.
It's like a new kind of arms race.
In a way, yeah. And the articles really highlight the need for global cooperation here. We have to make sure that access to this technology is fair, that everyone benefits, not just a few powerful nations.
Absolutely.
And we also have to think about the potential for misuse,
Yeah.
Could bodyoids be weaponized somehow?
That's scary.
It is. So the research is really emphasizing the need for strong international regulations, for oversight mechanisms, for biosecurity protocols. We have to get ahead of this and make sure it's used for good.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here: science, ethics, society, geopolitics. But what about the impact on our culture?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, how we view the human body, our definitions of life and death, all of that could be upended.
The articles, I mean, they talk about bodyoids becoming a subject in art and literature.
Yeah, like a reflection of how we're grappling with all of this.
And could there be new forms of stigma? Like people who get bodyoid-derived organs, will they be treated differently?
That's a possibility. And what happens to our understanding of human relationships when we have these spare bodies around? It's like a whole new layer of complexity.
And how about our funeral practices? Like if death is less permanent, how does that change how we mourn and say goodbye?
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine. And the notes even talk about bodyoids as a canvas for art, using them as a medium for expression. It's really wild stuff.
It's like we're entering a whole new cultural era.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of wild stuff, the research also goes into some really out there speculations. I mean, we're talking about engineering bodyoids for dangerous jobs, working in hazardous environment,
Right.
or exploring the possibility of consciousness transfer, although that's way beyond what we're talking about now with bodyoids lacking, the neural structures for consciousness.
Right.
But maybe using bodyoids to study consciousness itself, to understand how it works.
Okay.
And then there's this idea of combining bodyoids with robotics, creating these biomachines.
It's like a fusion of biology and technology.
It is.
Yeah.
But we also have to be mindful of the potential downsides. I mean, some people are worried that the easy availability of bodyoids could lead to a devaluation of human life.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
It is. And that's why the research really emphasizes the importance of asking these big questions now.
Yeah, like what really defines a person?
Exactly. And where do we draw the ethical lines when it comes to creating and using and potentially even, further developing bodyoids? Like what if we start adding neural components at some point? Is that crossing a line?
And how will this impact our attitudes towards risk? If you know you can get a new heart or a new lung, do you start taking more chances?
It's a big philosophical question, right?
It is. And there are no easy answers.
No.
It's going to take a lot of discussion and debate to figure all of this out.
It will. And it's going to take people from all walks of life, not just scientists and ethicists, but everyone. This is something that affects us all.
It really does.
It does.
So how do we see this unfolding? Like, how do bodyoids actually become a part of our world?
Well, the research suggests it'll probably be a gradual process, starting with medical research and drug development. That's where the ethical concerns might be a bit less thorny. But the articles really emphasize the importance of public discussion and having these clear ethical guidelines in place right from the start.
That's so important.
It is. And there are going to be challenges, of course. I mean, there's going to be public apprehension and the need for good regulations. And of course, the technical hurdles are still there.
We've got a ways to go.
We do. But there are things that could really accelerate the adoption process too. If we have big scientific breakthroughs that really showcase the benefits of using bodyoids, that could change public opinion.
Yeah.
And if we can show that this technology significantly reduces animal suffering, that's going to be a big motivator for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And public education is key too,
Right.
We have to address people's concerns, explain the potential benefits in a clear way.
Yeah, communication is everything.
It really is.
So to wrap this up, I mean, it's clear that this bodyoid technology, it's revolutionary and it's complex, and it's got the potential to really change the world.
It does. I mean, we talked about how it could revolutionize research, speed up drug development, and maybe even end the organ shortage. But we also explored all the big questions it raises for our economy, for our social structures, for our ethics, for the environment, for global politics, for our very culture.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that this is a paradox. We're creating life without consciousness, and we're doing it to try to save conscious lives.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance and one that we're going to have to walk very carefully.
For sure. And as we move forward with this technology, I think the big question is, what's our responsibility? How do we shape its development and make sure it's used ethically?
It's not just a scientific question. It's a human question.
Exactly. And it's one that's going to stay with us for a long time to come.
It will. This is just the beginning of the conversation.
And it's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
Absolutely.
That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Our podcast AI Voices are courtesy of Notebook LM and 11 Labs, the humans and AIs of the AI Plus Roundtable. Thank you for joining us on this journey into uncharted territories.
Visit us on Substack at airoad.substack.com for free access to our other expeditions into the unknown. We thank our producers, the humans at Innovation Toronto and ChatGPT, Claude, Cohere, Copilot, DeepSeek, 11 Labs, Gemini, Grok, Llama, Mistral, Notebook LM, and Perplexity for co-creating the research used to create this podcast. We look forward to welcoming you on board for our next explorations into uncharted territories.